This is going to be a huge shocker to you, but crypto and blockchain's best use case is not a more efficient means of making payments. It's not that it's a really good investment vehicle and you can make life-changing returns. Nor is this best use case all of the promises that decentralization is supposed to bring. What if I told you that crypto and blockchain's best use case, its last boss, is actually strengthening our property rights? In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how and why property rights is crypto and blockchain's biggest use case. And when I say crypto and blockchain, I don't just mean Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm talking about DeFi and specifically NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. We're going to cover what property rights are, the history of the American property rights system, and why it's damn near impossible to replicate. We're going to cover the issues with property rights in third world countries and developing countries. And at the end, I'm going to cover exactly why and how crypto is the strongest form of property and how it can be used to solve property right issues in third world and developing countries. Before I get started, I have to tell you that this is not financial advice. Please consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. This video is for your education purposes only, and always do your own research. So to start, let's cover exactly what property rights are. So if we look at Investopedia, property rights are defined as the theoretical and legal ownership of resources and how they can be used. These resources can be both tangible or intangible and can be owned by individuals, businesses, and governments. In many countries, including the United States, individuals generally exercise private property rights or the rights of private persons to accumulate, hold, delegate, rent, or sell their properties. So here in America, we love crypto assets because they offer crazy investment returns. But in third world countries, crypto is actually needed and needed heavily. Why? You think our inflation is bad here in the US at 7-8%. In other countries, they have double-digit inflation. Shoot, in places like Zimbabwe, they're wiping their ass with their money because toilet paper is worth more. So you don't want to save in a currency like that. You know, we have the dollar here, and the dollar is stable, relatively speaking. But if you would have saved in Bitcoin versus any other currency for the past 10 years, you'd be doing a lot better than had you not. Also, if you look at the war in Ukraine, when the government put sanctions on their money, they weren't allowing people to withdraw from ATMs or banks. Crypto was the only way that people could send money down there and actually help people and save their lives. Your money is your property. Your assets are your property. All of this revolves around property rights. And property rights in third world countries and developing countries are effed up. Did you know that there is $9 trillion in dead capital globally? Why is that? Because people can't prove ownership of their property, and ownership is the foundation of capitalism. So before we move further, let's define capitalism. So it says here that capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Central characteristics of capitalism include capital accumulation, competitive markets, price system, private property, property rights, recognition, voluntary exchange, and wage labor. In a market economy, aka a capitalist society, decision-making and investments are determined by owners of wealth, property, or ability to maneuver capital or production ability in capital and financial markets, whereas prices and the distribution of goods and services are mainly determined by competition in goods and service markets. So as you can see, capitalism and ownership go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Like once people were able to prove that they own real estate, now they were able to stimulate capital from it, hence the word capitalism, which is credit. You can prove that you own an asset and everyone else knows it because it's in a property system that everyone else agrees upon, with laws that everyone agrees upon. And now you can borrow against that real estate and create credit. And through that credit, you can hire people and give out jobs and create actual products. Most businesses get their capital from financing, but you can't finance something without form of collateral. And collateral is always some form of property. And if you can't prove that you own your property, you can't use it as collateral to borrow. If you're not able to borrow and you're not able to attain any financing, then you can't provide any labor. You can't hire people. And if you can't hire people to build the products and services, we don't have any products and services to enjoy. Like look around you. Everything in our outside world, most of everything was built because it was financed by someone. And they were able to finance it because they were able to put up some form of collateral. And that's why if you look at third world countries, they don't have the things we take for granted, like toilet paper and running water and all these kind of things, even paper clips, because they can't get access to any capital. Now, if you're interested in this kind of thing, I recommend you read a book called The Mystery of Capital. It pretty much breaks all this down. I read it and I took probably like 5 pages of notes on it, and I'm going to read some of those notes here and elaborate on them. Most of the poor already possess the assets they need to make success of capitalism. Even in the poorest countries, they save. The value of savings among the poor is 40 times all of the foreign aid received throughout the world since 1945. But they hold these resources in defective form. Houses built on land whose ownership rights are not adequately recorded, unincorporated businesses with undefined liability, industries located where financiers and investors cannot see them. Because the rights to these possessions are not adequately documented, these assets cannot readily be turned into capital. They can't be traded outside of the narrow local circles where people know and trust each other. They can't be used as collateral for a loan, and they can't be used as a share against an investment. In the West, America, by contrast, every parcel of land, every building, every piece of equipment, or store of inventories is represented in a property document that is a visible sign of a vast hidden process that connects all these assets to the rest of the economy. Thanks to this representational process, assets can lead an invisible parallel life alongside their material existence. They can be used as collateral for credit. The single most important source of funds for new businesses in the United States is a mortgage on the entrepreneur's house. These assets can also provide a link to the owner's credit history, an accountable address for the collection of debts and taxes, and a foundation for the creation of securities that can then be rediscounted and sold in secondary market. By this process, the West injects life into assets and makes them generate capital. The craziest sentence there is most of the financing that entrepreneurs get is borrowing against their house. All the entrepreneurs aren't just here in the US. We just have the best property system. You don't think it's geniuses over in third world countries? Yes, there are. But their property system is so effed up that they can't prove that they own their home, so they can't borrow against it, so they can't finance their company. They just happen to do everything off of pure sweat equity, and you're not gonna get very far with that. Apple wouldn't be where it is today without finance, and neither would Google, neither would Microsoft, neither would Amazon, neither would any of these companies. I'm reading another point here. Third world and former communist nations do not have this representational process. As a result, the enterprises of the poor are very much like corporations that cannot issue shares or bonds to obtain new investment, capital, and finance. Without representations, their assets are dead capital. The poor inhabitants of these nations, which is 5 out of 6 people in the world, do have things, but they lack the process to represent their property and create capital. They have houses but not titles. They have crops but not deeds. Businesses but not statutes of incorporation. It is the unavailability of these essential representations that explains why people who have adapted every other Western invention, from the paperclip to the nuclear reactor, have not been able to produce sufficient capital to make their domestic idea work. And this explains why citizens in developing countries can't have profitable contracts with strangers. If you don't have any property to lose, collateral, you'll only be taken serious by your family and your neighbors and the people who know you within your small community. Now that we're talking about business, I want to talk about the next point. Here in America, we can set up an LLC, we can expedite it and have it set up overnight in some states, but most states you can get it set up between 1 to 4 days. You most likely will never have to wait over a week to get an LLC set up, get your registered agent, get a business bank account, all that stuff, prove that you own it here in the United States. In other countries, this is a problem. It is nothing like how it is here in the US and other first world countries. In the beginning of the video, I said there's over $9 trillion in dead capital. This shows all of the countries' population and how much assets is there, but that they can't borrow against. $9 trillion. You know how much production can happen with $9 trillion? Let's look at some specific countries. In the Philippines, there is $132 billion worth of dead capital. In Peru, you have $74 billion of dead capital. And in Egypt, you have $241 billion of dead capital. In Haiti, you have $5.2 billion of dead capital. Take a look at this. This is the procedure to gain access to deserted land for construction purposes and to register these property rights in Egypt. You literally have to go through 77 steps. You have to talk to 31 different entities. These are the different public and private entities you have to talk to. And this process can take between 6 to 14 years versus less than a month in the US, or a few weeks, or even a week. Take a look at this. This is the procedure to obtain a sales contract following the 5-year lease contract in Haiti. You literally have to go through 111 steps, and it takes 4,112 days. And lastly, take a look at this. These are the bureaucratic steps required by the municipality of Lima, Peru to obtain a legal title to a home in a validated housing settlement. You have to literally go through 728 bureaucratic steps. And I don't know how long this one can take, but I'm imagining it can take years. Like, this is ridiculous. And it's expensive too. And most people in third world countries, their currencies are deflating because the governments are printing too much money. So they're saving, trying to prove that they own their home, register their business, and their savings is just dwindling, and they don't have money. And it's causing huge issues. So as you can see, there are virtual mountains of dead capital that lines the street of every third world and former communist country. And it's the communist countries mainly because communism, the government owns everything. And when you go from communist to something else, if the government owned everything, the people didn't own anything, it takes a long time and money and resources to divvy out all of those resources. Like, who's to say who gets what, Now, I touched on the point about it being expensive. I'm going to read another thing that I got from the book here. If there are costs to becoming legal, there are also bound to be costs to remaining outside of the law. In Peru, the cost of operating a business illegally includes paying 10 to 15% of its annual income in bribes and commissions to authorities. Add to such payoffs the cost of avoiding penalties, making transfers outside of legal channels, and operating from dispersed locations and without credit, and the life of an illegal entrepreneur turns out to be far more costly and more of a hassle than that of a legal businessman. In most third world countries, 80% of land parcels are not protected by up-to-date records or held legally by accountable owners. So now I hope you can see how property rights is a huge issue. So now I want to cover the history of our American property system, why it's so efficient, and why it's pretty much impossible to replicate. And I don't know if you heard the story, but the gold rush in California is a big reason why our property system is the way it is. Let's look into it. The news of gold brought approximately 300,000 people to California from the rest of the United States and abroad. The sudden influx of gold into the money supply reinvigorated the American economy. The sudden population increase allowed California to go rapidly to statehood in the Compromise of 1850. Fun fact about the gold rush is actually where the San Francisco 49ers got their name. So gold was discovered in California in 1848. 1849 was the year of the largest number of people immigrating to California to find gold, hence the name 49ers. And these 49ers were not particularly the nicest of folks. They attacked indigenous people and kicked them off of their land because they were looking for gold. So the Indians and all kinds of people who were inhabiting their land, they were killed, slaughtered, or just forced to leave their land and start over somewhere else. And it says here, at the beginning of the gold rush, there was no law regarding property rights in the gold fields, and a system of staking claims was developed. Now here's a section on the 49ers. And if we go here, when the gold rush began, the California gold fields were peculiarly, that's a tongue twister, lawless places. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, California, it was still technically a part of Mexico under the American military occupation as a result of the Mexican-American War. With the signing of the treaty ending the war on February 2nd, 1848, California became a possession of the United States, but it was not a formal territory and did not become a state until September 9th, 1850. California existed in the unusual condition of a region under military control. While the treaty ending the Mexican-American War obliged the United States to honor Mexican land grants, almost all the gold fields were outside those grants. Instead, the gold fields were primarily on public land, meaning land formerly owned by the United States government. However, there was no legal rules yet in place and no practical enforcement mechanism. The benefit to the 49ers was that gold was simply free for the taking at first. In the gold fields at the beginning, there was no private property, no licensing fees, and no taxes. The miners informally adapted Mexican mining law that had existed in California. For example, the rules attempted to balance the rights of early arrivals at the site with late arrivals. Claim could be staked by a prospector, but the claim was valid only as long as it was being actively worked on. People were squatting, looking for gold. The land was up for grabs, and people began to develop their own system of who owned what when. I'm going to read some more notes from the Mystery of Capital about this. Most people in developing and former communist nations cannot get into the legal property system such as it is, no matter how hard they try. Because they cannot insert their assets into the legal property system, they end up holding them illegally. The reason capitalism has triumphed in the West and sputtered in the rest of the world is because most of the assets in Western nations here have been integrated into one formal representational system. In California, just after the gold rush of 1849, there were some 800 separate property jurisdictions, each with its own records and individual regulations established by local consensus. Throughout the U.S., from California to Florida, claim associations agreed on their own rules and elected their own officer. Sounds like a DAO. It took more than 100 years, well into the late 19th century, for the U.S. government to pass special statutes that integrated and formalized U.S. assets. By enacting more than 35 preemption and mining statutes, Congress gradually managed to integrate into one system the informal property rules created by millions of immigrants and squatters. The result was an integrated property market that fueled the U.S. explosive economic growth thereafter. The reason it's so hard to follow the history of the integration of widespread property systems is that the process took place over a very long time, 200 plus years. But there was a price to pay. Once inside a formal property system, owners lost their anonymity by becoming inextricably linked to real estate and businesses that could be easily identified and located. People forfeited the ability to lose themselves in the masses. People who don't pay for goods and services they consume can be identified, charged interest penalties, fined, embargoed, and have their credit ratings downgraded, jeopardizing his reputation as a trustworthy party to his neighbors, utilities, banks, telephone companies, insurance firms, and the rest of the network that the property ties him to. Now, I want to talk about how crypto and blockchain technology offers the strongest property rights compared to other forms of property. Let's just talk about Bitcoin, because I feel like Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be around for the next 50 to 100 years, but I'm not so sure about all the other ones. You know, I have my hot picks, but that's for another video. But let's just look at this through the lens of Bitcoin. The SEC, the CFTC, all of the governing bodies consider Bitcoin property. And that's why I don't like calling them cryptocurrencies. You don't usually hear me say the word cryptocurrencies because it lends itself to a tragic misnomer, right? In order to be considered a currency, you have to be deemed non-taxable upon transfer, and Bitcoin is not. It's property. You have to pay capital gains tax, which gives it hope because you realize it's not competing with other currencies, it's competing with other assets, forms of property. So the first thing is, our lives are becoming increasingly digital. So we need our property to become increasingly digital, right? Like, imagine if our lives were becoming increasingly undigital, but we had some digital money. Like, imagine you go back to the days of bartering and trading, and you went up to someone and you tried to pay them with Bitcoin. They would look at you like, what the hell is this? Like, give me some gold coins. That's what we're doing right now. We have everything digital, but our money is still physical, operating on technology that is extremely outdated. So Bitcoin offers an asset, a network, and a protocol, all in one. The asset is capped at 21 million. It's the first time we've had digital scarcity. The network allows you to send it from New York to Zimbabwe in a matter of 5 minutes on the most secure network we've ever had in the world. And the protocol allows you to integrate it through different payment apps like Square, Venmo, PayPal, and have it all synchronized with integrity and updated with real time. It's indestructible. It can't be destroyed. Like I said, it's scarce. It's censorship resistant. No one can tell you what you can or can't use it for, if you can or can't buy it. They can say laws around what you can do when you buy it, but they can't stop you from doing it. All you need in order to get access to cryptocurrency or crypto assets, remember, is a smartphone. And there are more smartphones than there are people. So the barrier to entry is very low. I just showed you the hoops you got to go to register your property in a third world country. I just talked about how it's the most secure network in the world. It's never been hacked. It's more secure than any government database globally. Everything resides on a public blockchain, which is basically a ledger of who owns what when. And it's immutable. It can't be manipulated or changed. It's decentralized, right? There isn't one person who can shut it down. It's weightless. And a lot of people, when they talk about Bitcoin and crypto assets, they're like, oh, it's not tangible. Our our lives, like I said, are becoming increasingly digital. So it only makes sense that our assets and our money become increasingly digital as well. Let's talk about some benefits of this. If something is borderless, you can travel with it. Imagine trying to travel somewhere with a piece of real estate or some gold. You got $10 million in gold or real estate. What are you gonna do? Put your house on a plane and fly it? You gonna bring your gold on a plane and fly it? You have to hire security. It can get lost. It can get stolen. Bitcoin, you can send it anywhere around the world in a matter of minutes. And you don't have to worry about if it got there safely, just as long as you use the right address. If you don't like how your crypto assets is taxed in Florida, you can move it to Massachusetts. If you don't like how it's taxed in Massachusetts, you can move it to the Cayman Islands. If you don't like how it's taxed in the Cayman Islands, you can move it to a Swiss bank. If you don't like how it's taxed in the Swiss bank, you can memorize the seed phrase and put it in your head and just have it there in a wallet. You can't do that with a stock. You can't move a stock or a bond. You can't do that with a piece of real estate. We already talked about gold. Same thing with art. It can get lost. It can get stolen. It's expensive. It can get damaged. No other asset offers you these kinds of property rights. And one more thing on it being weightless, it doesn't need a custodian. That's a large reason why we're in this. Gold is heavy. It can get stolen. So if you have a lot of savings, you rather not have it in your house. You see these banks with their nice big pillars and they're like, oh, we'll store your gold and we'll give you an IOU, which is what a dollar actually is. But throughout history, people always print more money than they have in gold. A run on the bank pursues after that. We experience inflation because they print money and use it for whatever they want. And this cycle has been repeating itself since the beginning of time. Bitcoin or crypto, you can have $10 million in your pocket. You can have it on your mattress and no one knows. If someone threatens to shoot you, they can't take it. If they threaten to bomb your house, they can't take it. You can send it to your cousin in another state. What's better than that? It fits all the properties of money. It's a medium of exchange, a unit account, and a store of value. And and touching on that, it's accepted as payment pretty much anywhere. There isn't a lot of places you will go in the world where someone won't accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. A lot of people won't accept a lot of these foreign currencies. The dollar and Bitcoin will usually be accepted pretty much anywhere. And most importantly, crypto can be used as collateral for you to be able to get a loan and fund your business, something you can't do. So it's like if you're in a third world country and you can't prove that you own your home, okay, buy some Bitcoin, borrow against that. Now you can fund your business. You can take out a loan. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be a previous felon or whatever. I'm no judge or anything, but some people deserve a second chance. And with how our society is set up, those people who deserve second chances, it's hard when you have the label of a felon. Now you can't get funding for anything. With DeFi, that changes. Which brings me to my next point. Let's talk about decentralized finance and how its property rights can help people. There are 3 billion people in the world who don't have access to modern day banking services that we take for granted, right? Why? Why is a bank gonna go to Peru or Egypt or those places I just showed you where it takes 10, 20 years to set up an LLC? They don't have any form of collateral. If they don't have any collateral, the banks can't take that collateral and lend money to anyone. The bank's business model don't work if there isn't a property system in place. Like I said, with DeFi, you can have your crypto assets. You can go on Aave right now. It doesn't matter what your credit score is or whatever. If you have the collateral, you can take out an over-collateralized loan. I know a guy in Mexico who sells mangoes. He's not saving in the peso. He started saving in Bitcoin years ago in ETH, and I showed him Aave. He was trying to get a loan for his business for the longest time. He used his crypto as collateral. He was able to borrow some money to buy some more fruits, and then he was able to pay that loan back and still keep his crypto. And you don't pay taxes on borrowed funds. That goes back to the whole capitalism thing. Without credit, things are bad. With too much credit, things are bad. Like right now, we have this extremely high inflation because we extended too much credit. But it can be just as bad if you don't have any credit. These third world countries can't produce credit from their assets, right? Credit is only good when it is used for productive things, like this mango guy. He borrowed money, he provided jobs for people to make money for his company, and now he was able to take that money, pay the loan back, and keep some profits, right? You do that over and over and over again. Now you may not need to borrow as much. You still have your assets, and now you're still able to provide jobs for people, which is what this whole thing is all about when it comes to capitalism. So now let's move on to the next point. We're almost done. Let's talk about how NFTs can help solve property right issues in these third world countries. So we already talked about how, all you need is a smartphone to be able to buy your Bitcoin. Okay, that's cool. They can take their money and they can buy an asset. But what about the assets that they already have? What about their homes that they illegally own? Well, what if you could tokenize that home and prove that you own it? So before we get into that, let me just talk about what an NFT is. NFT stands for non-fungible token. Non-fungible means not exchanged equally for another item. Bitcoin is fungible. 1 Bitcoin is equal to 1 Bitcoin anywhere in the world. Same with the US dollar. An NFT, like I can tokenize this remote for my lights, make it an NFT, and now the entire world can speculate on it. But it's just this one thing, right? So NFTs allows you to bring your property to life. Before I dive into this more, you guys go follow Jay Manchin. He made a really good video on real estate tokenization, and he and I are gonna collab and make a video on the benefits of tokenization here in the next few weeks. So definitely go give his channel a follow. But these countries who have these property systems that are not up to date, they can upload the property onto a blockchain and have smart contracts govern the whole thing, so they don't have to pay anyone else to do it. You just have to pay to get it set up. So let me explain how this will work. First, I have to explain what a smart contract is. A smart contract does 3 things and 3 things really well. They store rules, they verify rules, then they execute functions based on those programmed rules. So the best example of this is a vending machine. The storing of rules in a vending machine is saying, hey, I know C7 is a bag of Doritos that are $1. The verifying of rules is saying, hey, once you put in this $1, I can verify this is a real dollar. And the executing of the function is saying, hey, I verify this is a real dollar. So when he clicks C7 and this dollar is enough to get him this bag of Doritos or this power weight, I'll drop it so you can grab it and enjoy. That's how smart contracts work. Now, imagine if instead of a vending machine, you had an exchange. And instead of chips being sold inside the exchange, you had real estate and people's homes being sold on there. And instead of clicking C7 and having a bag of Doritos drop as the programmable function, what if you had it so that you had to have this credit score that you updated, you had to have this amount of money, you have to sign this property deed to get this title, and you have to sign this document and XYZ. And once all of those conditions are met, the title is transferred to your wallet, and now you're the new owner. Boom. No one had to keep it up to date. It just had to be programmed in the beginning. And now you have a functioning property system on a immutable blockchain. Like blockchains and NFTs and smart contracts can literally solve all of these issues that we're having. It's just gonna take some time and take people understanding the significance of the technology and how it can actually work. And I'm not sure which blockchain this is gonna happen on. There's a few of them that are trying to spearhead this initiative. It's a lot of firms. Some real estate has already been tokenized here in the US, but not only can you tokenize the real estate, you can offer fractional ownership. Let's say you're a citizen in a third world country and you wanna split your home and you have 4 kids. And you don't know who to pass it on to because you love all the kids the same. An NFT can represent ownership in 25% of the home, and now you can give all of your kids a home if that's all you have, right? And not only can you tokenize the equity in the home, you can also tokenize the mortgage, any kind of loan, just like we securitize loans. NFTs is just about art, just like people thought, oh, the internet is just about advertising, but now you don't buy from a company unless they have a website. NFTs, their true purpose is property rights. And in the future, you won't buy any kind of exclusive item, high price item, whose ownership trail can't be shown with an NFT. So I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of research and work went into making it. So if you would please consider subscribing. I'm trying to grow this channel and get this message out to the world. Like I said, follow my buddy Jay Manchin. We're gonna make a video on tokenization coming soon. Put in the comments what you want us to talk about. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feedback. Let me know if you think I was wrong. What points did I hit on right? What points did I not hit on right? But other than that, I thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year. I love all of you, and I will see you in the next video.